Welcome to Uniquely Qualified. I'm your friend and host, Liz Ficken, and I'm so glad you're here. Uniquely Qualified is a podcast that empowers guests to share their experience, strength, and hope in overcoming challenges in the spirit of mutual healing. We hope that you'll leave feeling more aware, connected, and supported in navigating the human experience. Today, I'm joined by an incredible guest and sorority sister whose journey is a powerful testament to resilience and reinvention. Sarah King is the founder of Aurora House, a creative community space dedicated to authentic expression, connection, and empowerment for women and non-binary individuals. Before creating the sanctuary, Sarah spent years in the high-pressure world of tech, working as a chief operating officer at an AI startup based in Austin, Texas. She led technical teams while traveling constantly, fundraising, and navigating the relentless demands of the AI industry. But behind the scenes, she was also battling debilitating endometriosis pain and the mental toll of balancing her role with the impact of this chronic illness. In 2023, after finally receiving a diagnosis and undergoing an intense surgery removing stage 4 endometriosis from multiple organs throughout her torso, she knew something had to change. That turning point led her to step away from the corporate world and build something radically different. Aurora House is the manifestation of that shift, a place where people can slow down, reconnect with themselves, and tap into the creativity and community that so many of us crave. Today, we're diving into Sarah's story, what led to this transformation, the lessons she's learned along the way, and what it truly means to create a life aligned with your values. Sarah King, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, girl.
Hey.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so honored to have you. Before we get in, I'll just ask the question I ask all of our guests. How are you uniquely qualified?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this question, and I feel like what really makes me uniquely qualified is that I heeded the call of my body
Mm,
to align with my soul path. And that sounds really woo-woo. But I really feel like my endometriosis diagnosis was the culmination of so much misalignment in my life.
yeah.
And it woke me up to pursuing something that was more aligned. And
Mhm.
as I've gotten more into the woo in that process, I have been so validated in being in the right place. And yeah, I think that heeding that call and that invitation has what has made me uniquely qualified.
Oh my gosh. Goosebumps already. I'm really eager to dig into that. I think that there's not a single person who couldn't learn from that and aspire to be in alignment with their values, listening to themselves. Before we get too much into our conversation, I do want to lay out for our listeners some information about endometriosis, taking the emotional burden off Sarah, which I don't normally explain around medical issues, but that's why I do that, listeners, is I want to take the burden off the person who is living with the condition or whatever their challenge has been from a health perspective, and also educate. So endometriosis is a disease that impacts 1 in 10 women, and it takes an average of 8 years to be diagnosed and addressed. It's staged similarly to cancer because its severity and spread can vary widely from person to person, and this staging helps classify the extent of the disease in a standardized way. But unlike cancer, endometriosis is not a malignant or life-threatening condition, although it can be incredibly painful and debilitating. Endometriosis is considered one of the most painful diseases, often compared to the pain levels of a heart attack. And studies have ranked it among the top 10 most painful medical conditions. So, what makes it so painful? Endometriosis lesions cause chronic inflammation. The endometrial like tissue growing outside the uterus bleeds and sheds just like the uterine lining does during a period, but with nowhere to go. This leads to inflammation, swelling, and irritation of the surrounding organs. The body responds with chronic inflammation, which causes the persistent pain and increasing nerve sensitivity. Endometriosis lesions can grow along nerve pathways, especially in deep infiltrating cases. And over time, these lesions can rewire and hypersensitize nerves, leading to excruciating pain even outside of a menstrual cycle. Over time, scar tissue, also known as fibrosis, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, sir. Okay.
Yeah,
And it,
fibrosis. So sometimes
fibrosis.
people say,
Okay, thank
yeah.
you. So the fibrosis and adhesions develop gluing organs together. As an example, uterus glued to the colon, bladder stuck to ovaries. This causes sharp pulling or tearing pain, especially during movement, digestion, urination, and sex. And while the pain often worsens during menstruation, many people with severe endometriosis experience daily pain, including pelvic pain, stabbing sensations, and deep radiating discomfort in the back, legs, and abdomen. It affects multiple systems. It's not just a reproductive disease. It affects the digestive, urinary, musculoskeletal, and nervous systems. Symptoms like bladder pain, painful bowel movements, nausea, and whole body fatigue can make daily life unbearable. And with many things that involve women's health issues, there is medical gaslighting and delayed diagnosis. Average diagnosis takes 7 to 10 years. 7 to 10 years, meaning many patients suffer untreated for decades. And because period pain, as well as a lot of other women's pain, is dismissed as normal, many people are told their symptoms are exaggerated or psychological, worsening the emotional and mental toll. Additionally, just a quick note on the psychological impact. Chronic pain rewires the brain, making it more sensitive to pain signals over time. Many endo warriors experience depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder like symptoms from years of medical trauma, pain, and feeling dismissed by doctors. So I just wanted to give us all that common language and awareness. 1 in 10 is not a small number, and I was personally floored by the decades of time that it can take for individuals to be diagnosed. Is there anything that you want to add in there, Sarah, from the perspective of just talking about endometriosis as a medical issue, a disease?
Yeah, yeah. And I appreciate you so much for like carrying that.
Thank you.
Because it's interesting to hear it read back,
Mm,
and all the different points that resonate with my experience. Also, coming on to the podcast and talking about my experience, having like being so, I guess, far away from my surgery now. I kind of have this like, oh, well, mine's not as bad as other people, that type of
sure.
comparison.
Yeah.
And then reading, like hearing that read back, I'm like, no, mine was like my experience, validating my experience essentially.
Yes. Yes.
But I think that one other thing to know is that like there's no test for endometriosis.
Mm,
Often like the radiologist that works in the gynecologist's office that is reading ultrasounds all day, every day, does not know how to identify it on like a scan.
yeah.
And right now they are developing tests to be able to more quickly identify endometriosis. And we'll get into this in my story, but it's just, in my opinion, a matter of training. And,
Mm-hmm.
my specialist was able to very quickly diagnose me looking at an ultrasound. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's just really interesting the gap in skill set, I guess, and
Yeah.
experience between obviously a specialist who's working on this every single day, evangelizing this, doing research, all the things. I'm very lucky to be in Austin and have UT here. But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, just being able to diagnose it is really, really difficult for the kind of like average OB-GYN.
Mm. Oh man, I immediately want to launch into a diatribe about women's pain not being believed, but maybe we can save that and I can get into a
Yeah,
rant mode later in your story.
perfect.
But how
Recently, I
about
was called
we
a co-conspirator, and I was like, I fucking love that. And yes, I swear.
Oh,
So,
yes. Oh yeah,
yeah.
no. We'll have an E on this one for sure. There's gonna
Okay.
be we're gonna say fuck a bit. I have a feeling it's gonna be good.
Yes.
Let's take it back to where we first met. Because I think there's gonna be some themes from our origin story that will lend to the work that you're doing now. So we met at Chapman University in Orange County, California in 2008. I was a year ahead of Sarah. I graduated from high school and started college in 2007. Sarah was just 1 year behind me. And Sarah, please like collaborate with me on this. Don't let this be like,
Yeah.
here is the Liz Ficken narrative and may it be true. So I one of the things that Sarah and I were discussing in pre-show is Chapman culture. There's a lot of privilege. There's a lot of wealth, and it is espoused in a very material way. Am somebody who was raised in a family experiencing financial insecurity and always had to like work multiple jobs, even in high school. I was really intimidated by people who were receiving like brand new, very nice cars for high school graduation or families gifting plastic surgery. It was just totally foreign to me. I was a little fish out of water. And when I joined our sorority and met our mutual big sis, Jackie, Jackie, we love you.
We love
Um,
you,
we
Jackie.
love you so much, Jackie. Thank you for listening and bringing us together, because without Jackie, this
Yeah.
who knows if this moment would be happening. But she really filled for me a maternal role, where I felt loved by her. Oh my gosh, I'm already gonna start with tears. Seen by her, appreciated by her, where I was just feeling so out of place. I had also, for what it's worth, I'm a 9-time legacy of a different sorority, and I broke a chain there because it just didn't fit for me. And so it's just a lot of like, but then she saw me and I was safe with her and she really took care of me. And there were a couple older women in the sorority who did that too. But then Sarah King arrives on the scene and she immediately, I was so intimidated. She was just like so fun, such a bright light. Both Sarah and Jackie were on the swim team together. They even looked like they could be related. I'm shorter than both of
Uh,
them.
I did have her fake ID at one point.
Yeah, which I could have never pulled off. I had some other random blonde persons, but yeah, like I was just like, oh my gosh, they are so. Jackie filled this maternal place for me of like I belong, and I had this very, now I know it's adaptive child response of like, no, don't take that away from me. I was really threatened by Sarah, and ultimately the lesson I learned though through just the next 3 years was what was initially intimidation was me just recognizing actually like this like power in Sarah that was all power that was also something that I had that maybe I didn't even recognize at the time. um, and I always knew that Sarah was there for me, that she was like in so many ways like actually a sister for me. I leaned a bit into the hustle culture that was present at Chapman. I was president of our sorority, was in other leadership positions in campus, and I always knew that like Sarah was there for me. And there were a couple times where, my senior year especially, it's one of those moments where I'm like, oh gosh, I hope other people don't remember this, but I just remember being like a drunk mess at one point and running into you, and you helped me. And that was I freshly had PTSD. I don't know if you know that, Sarah, but like
No.
yeah, I actually haven't like fully mentioned this on the podcast, but I was sexually assaulted at
Oh
Chapman
my gosh.
between our junior and senior year, and our sen my or my junior and senior year, and I was a mess. Like was active in PTSD, and that's when my drinking, my maladaptive relationship with alcohol really took off. And so the event where I'm thinking
Mm.
about running into you, I like looking back, I see that as somebody who was just like just so dysregulated central nervous system. And then you were once again this like safe sister for me. And so I just wanted to like mention that. and like send some love and appreciation your way. But
Yeah.
also the lesson that I learned was if I am honestly, ever since first meeting you, it's like if I meet a woman and the first reaction is, oh my gosh, I'm intimidated. I now know, okay, take like a second and look underneath it. And it probably means that I'm going to love the hell out of that person. I probably like, there's something that I like am inspired by or drawn to. And so I just wanted to set that up for people that has been a very important role that you've played in my life, where it's like when sensing intimidation, questioning it, and then
Hmm.
actually like leaning towards it is like how might we support one another and love one another. So I'll stop
Yeah.
talking there because this is your episode, Sarah.
No, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I actually, my like core coping mechanism is disassociation. So my memory is
Yes.
horrible.
Oh, great. I'm
Um,
glad you don't remember. I
yeah,
mean, great for me.
yeah.
Sorry.
Um, no, but thank you so much for sharing that. And I share that experience actually from
Really?
Chapman. And yeah, and I mean, it was, I'm from Massachusetts. I grew up on the East Coast. You know, wealth there looks very different than wealth in Orange
Right.
County. And it was a huge culture shock for me too. And there was so much, obviously in college, just like drinking in general, but like using drinking to like navigate our wounding was
Yes.
a like broad sweeping coping mechanism across the entire student body. So,
Hmm.
and then from that experiences like sexual assault and taking advantage of people um, comes about. And so it's devastating
Yeah.
to share that. But I also like, I feel so like back in our sisterhood through that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I just remember when you became president, when you were running for president, like I was like, that's my president, baby. Like, yeah, yeah, it was so
Oh,
amazing.
I appreciate that so, so much. Thank you.
Yeah,
Just to
yeah.
have this support.
Yeah, but yeah, I'll say like, you know, my best friend in life from Chapman, our relationship started that way as well. We had a mutual
Mm,
best friend and we looked alike and our mutual
hmm.
best friends like didn't look like us and we were like, you are like we're taking up the same space and that still happens like in life and you know,
Right.
I'm running a women's organization. I think you know, it's also this morning at my altar, just kind of like reflecting on what needs to come through, how should I be, like what are the
Hmm.
words that I like want to speak into this podcast and like share with your listeners. And this message came onto my heart about like speaking about who I am and like really taking
Yeah.
ownership in that. And Aurora House is all about authentic expression. And,
Mm.
you know, I have realized that I am a community leader, I'm a community organizer, I'm a budding advocate. I've been like mostly apolitical, like, I'm going to make a local impact and put my head in the sand. I always have my little like crystal
Oh,
here as
love.
a
Yeah.
grounding. Yeah. So if you see that, that's what this is.
I love
Um,
it.
but yeah, and I have the most powerful women come through these doors.
Hmm.
Yesterday, we had an amazing co working session where a lot of influencers, you know, will come into the space and we'll co work together. And I admire these women so much for being able to so articulately speak their truth into the world. And I've learned that, yeah, that intimidation even like if you want to call it jealousy, I really
Hmm.
see jealousy as admiration. And
Mm.
um, yeah, this is a little tip from the Artist Way. If there are any creatives out there who have been interested in the book The Artist Way, I highly recommend it. We are doing a 12-week program about it here at Aurora House. And one of the exercises that Julia Cameron, the author, has you do is create a jealousy map. And you list the
Ooh.
people that you're jealous of and why you're jealous of them, and then a column that is what is a creative action that you can take towards fulfilling that thing that you're jealous about, because jealousy is really just a reflection of the things we desire in our lives.
Yeah,
And
gosh.
yeah, and unless there's
Yeah.
some sort of like other insecurity, or I do have moments where I don't there's like jealousy and envy is like
Mm,
I don't want that person to have that thing. Jealousy is like I wish I had that thing.
mm,
And so the jealousy element is something that we can lean into, that's beautiful and like inspiring, and have a creative action. All of the women that I put on my jealousy map are people that are out there speaking their truth and like doing it in a way that they are not afraid. And I really
mm-hmm.
don't consider myself afraid, but I think being in tech, and just being a woman in tech and a woman in
Yeah.
the world, where we're constantly silenced or questioned or not
Mm-hmm.
believed, it made my voice really small. And yeah, like physically speaking and feeling confident that I have the right words, that I sound credible, like all of these
Yes.
narratives internally that's like, I need to sound this way, I need to sound that way, like um prevents me from doing these things that like make me jealous of these other people. And so
Mm, mm-hmm.
yeah, this podcast is like such amazing timing too for me to lay that down. I really encourage myself to like not prepare. I'm like a chronic over preparer, and I'll
Yeah.
like come into something with tons of notes, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna speak my truth, whatever that looks like today,
Yes.
and whatever needs to come out will come out. So in Aurora House, Aurora is the goddess of dawn. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, she represents the new opportunity to
Mm.
authentically self express every single day. And that can look different every day. So,
Oh my gosh, I love that, Sarah. I love you so much. And I so love that you are taking that approach today because having known you since 2008, what you say is so powerful. It is needed, it is wanted, and it will be loved and appreciated. So shine that light, baby girl.
yes, thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes. Um, let's depart from Chapman and
Mm,
take us through your journey from undergrad or wherever you want to start to getting into your endometriosis journey. Because it sounds like a lot
yeah.
of this somatic awareness, this chronic pain is really what has informed this transformation and what you're creating now.
Yeah. I think I'll start with maybe even like tying off from Chapman. Like Chapman, you mentioned hustle culture,
Yeah.
and I was born to a single mom who I witnessed her, as I was growing up, hustling to like have a nice life and
Mm-hmm.
like give me the life that she desired for me. And so I was always around really ambitious women and a like community of women coming together to support like raising their kids together. And I kind of had this narrative of like, no one else is going to show up. And so you are the
Yeah.
one that has to show up, and there's no knight in shining armor. And I never had
Mm-mm.
that like parental dynamic of like shared support. And so I'm so grateful to my mom. I'm sure she'll listen to this episode. So thanks, mom.
Love you, mom.
Um, I'm wearing her earrings today just to
Oh,
have a
they're
little,
beautiful.
yeah, a little support from my mom with me, because she's been a huge advocate on this journey as well. But
Good.
I think that, I moved to Austin about 2 weeks after I graduated. I sold like all of my bedroom furniture from Chapman for $1,000, and that's all of the money that I drove to Austin with. And
Whoa.
sublet an apartment for 2 months and loved it. Got into tech. I was in sales. It was horrible. But I made my way to an AI company where I really rose through the ranks. I was a marketing manager, essentially, or community manager, and then moved into product management. Became VP of product, help our team 3x in 2020 and 2021. Helped our team raise a Series A. Um, and then yeah, stepped into leading product engineering, customer success, and all of that. There is this undertone of having to like overextend myself
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that like I'm getting mine.
Mm-hmm.
And also to prove to the world that I'm not a dumb blonde. And I'm not blonde right now.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But I grew up blonde. That is a narrative that was told to me my entire life.
Yeah.
And I just have this vendetta. Like, I am not fucking dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go like show everyone and prove to myself that I can accomplish great things. And the second that I got that like air of success, of like accomplishment, and also validation from my like male leaders, it was
Mm-hmm.
on. Like, I was just like, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to allow a chronic illness to like take over my body to
Mm-hmm.
be able to show them, whoever them is,
Yeah.
that I am worthy and deserving and capable of being in these spaces.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I relate to that really hard, and just on not to over index on the blonde thing. But when Sarah and I logged on, like I'm Brondy right now. She has beautiful auburn red hair. We were both like very blonde at Chapman, and Jackie is also very blonde. Um, but I had a conversation with a man. So I have historically worked in financial services. I've been laid off since May, struggling to find whatever is next for me. But I had a conversation probably almost exactly 2 years ago with a male mentor where I was like, what do I need to do to be taken more seriously? My age isn't going to change. The fact that I present as female and identify as female isn't going to change. Do I need to be less blonde? Like, that was the thing that I was like, what can I alter about myself to be taken more seriously? I had just gotten my MBA. I was like, I'm doing what I am told to do, but I'm not getting, I feel like I was still not being taken seriously, listened to, or advanced. And so I completely relate to you when you're saying, once I had that, it was on, and I would sacrifice anything, because that is so many of us, I think younger women coming up in these very male dominated industries. It's like you throw yourself against a wall, and then once that wall gives way, you're like, okay, I'm here. Let's fucking go.
Yeah.
So very much relating to you. I haven't done the
Yeah.
breaking through the wall thing yet. Maybe that'll come for me. Maybe I'll
I don't know if
ignore
you
the
want
wall.
to, honestly.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know that I want to. And where it's like the
Yeah.
expense, like you were saying, like the expense of ourselves to
Yeah.
fit into this, and like literally sacrificing our bodies, our spirits for
Yes.
somebody else's dollar.
Totally. I think that, I am so, so, so grateful. I would never change my path,
Right.
but I absolutely would not go back in time and live that again.
Right.
And I
Right.
and I wouldn't change things now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so interesting to see, like, I truly am in a different chapter of my life. My finances look so different. And
Mm-hmm.
I am, I was at like the top of the top, and now I'm like back at zero and I am
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
And it's scary, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I know what I'm building for and what I'm building towards, and I get to define what that looks like to meet my values, as
Yes.
opposed to before. Something that I felt in the last like 2 years of my role in that company was that I had adopted the values, and I love my CEO so much, but I had adopted his values and the values of the AI industry in general, and I was pushing my own values into it. How do we, make this accessible for all?
Mm-hmm.
But there was still such a venture capitalist undertone of,
Yeah.
you know, money, or like money over everything, essentially,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that I really lost touch with my true essence.
Yeah.
And my whole endometriosis journey has reconnected me with that. And I'm still on that journey, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I totally lost it. Breaking through that wall, you're making sacrifices on a much deeper level to to get that like validation and that admiration and whatever else comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could talk about that
Yeah.
forever, but I know that's not necessarily why we're here.
Yeah. Well, but if you wouldn't mind, share with us a little bit more about when looking back, you feel like that reached, let's call it a saturation point where you're like, I am so in this. I am giving all of myself to this endeavor. Um, and how that like in the Venn diagram of hustle culture, your chronic illness, like where are you starting to notice, oh my gosh, like this is my life right now. How am I here? Or maybe
Yeah.
I shouldn't be making any assumption about like that arrival point, but help us understand how you
Yeah.
come into that awareness.
I think there were some periods of time where we were traveling constantly, like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes 4 times a month. My last year, I was on airplanes on Saturday nights, Sunday mornings, like I
Mm-hmm.
was working every day. And in the height of my endometriosis pain, I
Mm-hmm.
had to talk to my CEO about that. Like he knew every time I was on my period.
Mm-hmm.
And every time, so my endometriosis would affect me the week before my period and then the
Mm-hmm.
week during my period. So I was impacted by pain for at least 2 weeks out of the month and then like random pain throughout.
Yeah.
But it was something that you probably would never speak to your boss about. And, we considered each other business partners when I stepped into the COO role. So there was like a, a more appropriate like closeness that we could have as opposed to like, this is my boss. I can't like tell him things. But it also was to a point where I was like, yeah, like I can't, I'm going to be 10 minutes late to breakfast this morning because I'm like, I can't stand up and
Mm-hmm.
I need to wait for my ibuprofen to kick in so that I can actually walk. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that like going out and I'm there were so many times where, we go to this like one of the biggest healthcare um, hospital systems in the United States. And I was there with all of the about 25 men who were all of the technical leaders in the organization who had thousands of employees within their IT organizations. And I'm the only woman. And at that point, I maybe was 30 years old
Mm-hmm.
and no technical background. Like, side note, I studied peace and conflict studies at Chapman. So
Yes, she did.
yeah, what I'm doing now is so much more aligned. But I had so much imposter syndrome and also like discrediting to overcome. But I was in those spaces, like defining their technical like AI architectures and teaching them how
Mm-hmm.
to implement AI to make their systems more streamlined. I was the one up on the whiteboard, and my CEO was extremely technical, sitting there just like letting me kind of like take the spotlight and then like backing
Mm-hmm.
me up on in certain questions or whatever. But those moments were definitely the moments where I was like, yeah, that saturation of like, oh my gosh,
Mm.
like I I don't have children, but I can't imagine moms who are in high visibility, high power roles where they're like, kid is in their lap while they're like raising $50 million on the phone or whatever. Like it's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. I'm like really medicating myself to be able to show up in these extremely high pressure environments. And it did really take a toll on me towards the end. I mean, my last
Mm-hmm.
year, we started a private equity fund. We were raising money into that to buy out our lead investors of the business. Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, and there was just so much chaos around that. And
Mm-hmm.
I was also, you know, kind of the internal CEO of our business while our CEO was out trying to raise money. I was supporting him, but also operating the business on his behalf while like we had to kind of split those duties. But I was also it was just so crazy. Like I was
Yeah.
living multiple roles, and having to
Hmm.
show up while also experiencing this pain for 2 weeks out of the month.
Wow. Well, I also just I think there's other listeners, other women will relate to. I'm glad that you had that candor with your CEO because I just have memories of like being in office and like shoving a tampon up my sleeve so that I can go to the bathroom so people aren't going to see that I'm on my period,
Yeah.
or really. And I guess I'm going to tie this back to the like, what do I need to do to be taken seriously? Not even like, I'm thinking about what it would take for you to be able to talk with your boss about, I am having this. It is related to the fact that I am a woman and have female reproductive organs in my body, where it's like, please don't discredit me because I am reminding you that I am female. And
Mhm.
how hard I imagine you had to fight to like rally to show up for these things where you're in chronic pain and you're like, I'm not going to let this get in the way of my success. I just think a lot of, and I don't want to like, I guess that's my experience where I have had, I've started getting headaches as a part of my menstrual cycle. And it wasn't
Oh,
until I was like in a chain of women leaders where I started saying, I get migraines that are hormonal around the time of the month. And so I'm so sorry, like I might just need some extra time because staring at a screen while I'm feeling this way is so painful for me. I think
yeah.
about you and how much more visible you were. Like I want to commend the strength while also saying I wish we didn't live in a world where you had to like push through and be
Yeah.
be validated professionally while in such pain and discomfort.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think as I made my exit and was thinking about what I was going to do next, it was so important to me to be in like feminine led business and recognize that men are on a 24-hour hormonal cycle, and that is what the average workday is defined around. And
Yes.
advocating for myself to like, I'm on a 28-day cycle, and that means that my weeks
Mhm.
need to look a lot different. And there's so much content out there about like how to
Yeah.
schedule your weeks that align with your menstrual cycle, and like what activities, whether it's planning or having meetings or strategy or like,
Hmm.
getting like doing all the like really like yucky tasks that you don't want to do, like how to kind of map those out. But it's really challenging in a corporate setting when a lot of
Yeah.
people are expecting you um, to be there at their beck and call. But I will
Yes.
say,
Yeah.
like, thankfully, my CEO was married, had two daughters, and so
Mm-hmm.
he really was an amazing ally. And there were days where if I needed to work from home, like he would make sure that lunch was ordered and like Uber Eats to me so that I didn't have to like even worry about that while I'm like
Oh, I
taking
love
meetings
that.
from bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. I'm just gonna add one more thing. In terms of, I know that Spain, does Portugal do this too now? Starts recognizing menstrual leave, and I know endometriosis is so much more than like the menstrual cycle. And you described like the 2 weeks, but that was actually knowing that other places in the world recognize the like feminine cycle as not being aligned with sort of like a business cycle. Where I was like, I'm gonna just start like speaking honestly about this health thing that's happening for me, because if this was like a this every 4 weeks my foot starts hurting and I can't do it, like I would have no problem talking about like a foot injury, but because it was
Yeah.
tied to like what makes me female, it was like I need to shrink away from it. I need to make myself smaller and not like complain and not alert them to that fact.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
just
It's really vulnerable because I
mhm.
even, I think back to, just hearing you share about your experience. I'm like, what was it that made me credible or gave me
Mm,
the like why did I break through that wall? Why was I
yeah,
taken seriously?
yeah,
Um, but I think my for most of my life, I mean, because of my mom, like, witnessing that kind of I guess, ambition, but I've
Mm-hmm.
always been pretty masculine. And I think that's
Mm,
also why people like other women are intimidated by me as well. There's this like, at least I perceive this kind of like masculine energy or this very powerful feminine energy that's masked as masculine is probably a better
mm,
way to unpack it.
mm-hmm.
And so it allows me to oh, there's a term for this. It's a really like therapeutic term about
Yeah,
like masking essentially, and being able to
yeah.
just show up as the other and as the
Mm,
masculine,
mm-hmm.
as you know, like yeah, I was
Yeah. I'm sorry I'm not able to
I
come
was
up
not
with it
fun to
either.
work
I
with
know what you're talking.
sometimes. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
think that some of that was like it sounds like you were brought up with being able to like step into that masculine energy and that type of power, but do you think there was also a like I need to clap back twice as hard because I need people to take me fucking seriously?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was told when our organization grew like 3x,
Yeah.
yeah, anyone who was not in my organization, and we had 75 people on our team, and 55 of them were in my org. And so the other 20 were absolutely terrified of me because I my teams relied on them and vice versa. And when
Hmm.
they were not delivering what they said they were going to deliver, like I would not fear calling that out and like really holding people accountable, men accountable to what they committed to deliver. And oof, especially if I was in pain. And I think another like thread to all of this is, you know, when we were in college, like I was kind of like the rebellious, like anti-hustle. Yes, I was on the swim
Hmm.
team. Like there was some discipline there, but like my major was really woo-woo. I, you know, like loved to party. And as I accomplished success, like I've always still been this like really self-expressive, creative, like funky. I love dressing up in costumes. I love being in a wig, like,
Yes.
you know, and so when I was working so hard, I was playing so hard. And during
Mm,
COVID, we were working, I mean, we had executive meetings at 7:30 a.m. 3 times a week. And I would work straight through the day until about 10 p.m. And that like 7 to 10 p.m. I would have to pour myself a glass of wine
mhm.
to like give myself a little treat to like get through that time and to like give
Yeah.
myself maybe like a dopamine hit and some like sugar and that
Yeah.
alcohol to like wind me down and get into this focus time because I was in meetings all day. And so that was my time to actually like execute and get stuff done.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I definitely had like, I wouldn't say a serious drinking problem during COVID, but I was drinking every day. So, I mean,
Hmm.
clinically, that's serious. And
Mm,
I really had to step back in 2021 and like redefine my relationship with alcohol. But
hmm.
I do see the endometriosis being very tied up in this like high cortisol releasing environment and then high play environment where I was like, I need to release this energy. I need
Hmm.
to not be at like tapping out at the top of my like fight or flight all the time
Yeah.
and like come down.
Hmm. Yeah. Did you how did you fit in the what I imagine was just playing very hard from what you just said?
Yeah.
Was that like you had Sundays or how did that play out?
Yeah. It really depended on the time of year, like where we were at in
Yeah.
our cycle. But it would be like one night a week, like
Hmm.
just like going really hard, maybe stay up till like 6 a.m. and just be like
Hmm.
demolished for the rest of the weekend. Um, or we would go, like my girlfriends and I would go on like ski trips and or like bachelorette parties, like those are my times where I was like, I'm on vacation, baby. Like, let's go. And
Yes.
yeah. And like all my best friends from high school, like we would get together and just have a time. And I was actually texting my best friend the other day that like I think about her bachelorette party. We went to Cabo. There were 22 of us.
Mm,
And yeah, and this was it was a 2022 maybe spring. And my CEO was so upset with me when I came back because I was like, I like it took me a couple days to recover from this like
yeah.
4 or 5 day trip to Cabo. And I went to Cabo
Yeah.
early to like have a beach vacay before like the chaos of the bachelorette party.
Hmm.
And we were always perpetually in a fundraising cycle.
Yeah.
Um, but it just like I think back to that was like a top 5 experience in my life was that bachelorette party. It was so much fun. And there was so much chaos going on like during that time at work. And I just remember like there was so much anger that I was coming back and not prepared to like get back into it. But I have
Mm,
no idea, like when I think back memory wise, like I don't know what I missed or like prevented us from doing, but yet I had a
yeah.
top 5 experience. So like I'm so fucking
Yeah.
glad that I did that. And
Hmm.
I think about it weekly. Like I'm like, damn, that was so fun.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit more about when you started investigating your chronic pain.
Yeah. So the oh man. So endometriosis for me like appeared in a lot of different ways.
Hmm.
And first, it was the like very clear pain during my menstrual cycle. And I also had bacterial vaginosis just like constantly. Like I could like look at something wrong and I would get BV. And so
Mm,
that is tied to endometriosis or like
hmm.
comorbidities or whatever.
Okay.
Although yeah, I say that because I don't know if comorbidity is just for disease and BV is obviously just an infection, but definitely a symptom of endometriosis. And
Mm,
I started to like go to the OB-GYN, I guess in 2022.
hmm.
I was in every month, like trying to figure out, like I had really horrible pain on my left ovary
Hmm.
and my OB-GYN was like, oh, you have fluid in your fallopian tube. That's what's causing all the pain. And the only way to resolve that is through like cutting your tube. I guess maybe this was 2023. The like it's weird now being in February and I'm like 2024 is like I feel
I
like I'm still in
know.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Um yeah, I'm getting lost on my calendar here because I also keep track of things based on like who I was dating at the time.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Yep. I
Yeah.
know. I know that. Um,
Yeah.
I think when we have chatted before, you mentioned like receiving a diagnosis in July of 2023. So I imagine there's
Yeah.
based on what you were saying about or what the research indicates about how long it takes to get a diagnosis, that it was probably a bit of time before then that you
For
started
me,
investigating.
yeah, for me, my timeline was much more accelerated. And
Good.
yeah, so I think it was 2022. I was like really like in the OB-GYN like once a month for like 6 months. And
Hmm.
then this is like probably TMI, but also really important for people who may have endometriosis. And I was just talking to a co-endometriosis warrior last night about this.
Hmm.
Um, I had blood in my stool when I was menstruating. And
Yeah.
so that's what really like illuminated like, oh, there's a serious issue here. Like you really should not have blood in your stool.
Yeah.
And so I I did present this to my OB-GYN. She was like, oh, okay, we'll get you with a gastroenterologist, and then
Mm,
like never made the referral. And so I like went months, I have really bad ADHD. And so I was like, okay, well, like if they're not going to make the referral, then like it's obviously not a big deal. And
right.
months go by. We're in 2023 at this point. My friend whose bachelorette party I went to in Cabo, her wedding happens. And one of my best guy friends from high school, he lives here in Texas with his wife. And she had endo surgery back in like 2021
Mm-hmm.
and maybe 22. And once you have the surgery and you understand like how much it can spread through your body, as like a patient of that, when you hear other women talk about their period symptoms, you want to be like, go get, like, go to the
Yeah.
specialist and make sure that it's not endometriosis. But you also don't want to assume or like make people feel like, everyone has endometriosis. I mean, 1 in 10 is
Mm-hmm.
a lot. Like, that is
It
like
is.
statistically very, very significant.
It
But
is.
at the same time, my friend who had been through the surgery, she had heard me share about my pain over time. And when we were at that wedding and I was sharing now some of these more kind of advanced symptoms, she was like, you need to go see my specialist. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and really like kind of just like forced it on me. And I'm so, so grateful
Mm-hmm.
because she was like, for her, it took 2 years to figure out, like, she had all these like weird bladder symptoms. And for me, that wasn't the case. Mine was very much more like colon oriented and also like pelvic floor pain.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that was April. I got home from that wedding and called the specialist, got in for an appointment in July.
Mm-hmm.
So like classic healthcare system these days, and
Mm-hmm.
waited months. And yeah, I think that those were, the symptoms. Also too, like get leading up to that was then when my symptoms like really started to compound. And so the
Mm.
days I only had my period for about 2 days, but when I had my period, I was like completely debilitated. I would literally like sit on the toilet for like an hour, just like, because that was the most comfortable position for me to be
Mm.
in, is that
Yeah.
like bearing down, because your pelvic, like all of your pelvic muscles get inflamed and they get really tense. And
Yeah.
so bearing down actually helps to make them not like constrict as much.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, um, and like passing blood and all of that, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Oh.
I would have like these like blackout pain moments where like I like similar to almost like a migraine, like I wouldn't even be able to see.
Oh,
And I would
yeah.
just like end up like on the floor in my bathroom, like waiting for it to pass.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the most like alarming moments of like, this is really bad.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry you had to live through that, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I survived. It
You
gets better.
survived. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And so I, you went and saw the specialist that your friend recommended. And is that
Yes.
when you started getting some traction in terms of moving forward with providers and actually being taken
Yes.
seriously? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
so it was so crazy. So I went to Dr. Michael Breen here in Austin. He's like one of the top two doctors. Him and Dr. Garza are like the top two endo and laparoscopic surgeons in town. They both are also like leading researchers at UT on endometriosis and women's health. Um, and I went in and I told him, also too, when I was going into the OB-GYN for those 6 months, like I would get an
Hmm.
ultrasound every time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, and they could never identify any. They would be like, "Oh, you have a cyst." And in June, I did go a final time and I had horrible pain in my left ovary. And my OB-GYN was like, oh my gosh, good news. The fluid in your fallopian tube that I told you like wouldn't go away on its own, went away on its own. We don't have to do surgery. And I got screwed up on my timeline because I remember the guy I was dating at the time. He's from
Mm-hmm.
France, and France has like, universal healthcare and very like holistic health. Like if you go in,
Yeah.
like they're not as like I don't know, they're a little less like clinical in the sense of like, oh, we must do this surgery. And so when I shared that with him,
Yeah.
he was like, no way, like they are not cutting your tube. This is crazy. That is so extreme. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm so thankful for that, because at the time I really was just taking it with like, okay, well, that's the only solution. And I'm just going to live through this pain because I don't want to do that. And when he
Mm-hmm.
flagged that as like, there has to be another way, was when I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank God for a man advocating for me, like for once.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah,
Totally. I feel like there's this internalization of like this person has their medical doctorate. This person knows what they're talking
yes,
about. Like they know more than because they have this education, they know more than me. So I should trust. And I feel like the more episodes that Uniquely Qualified has about people with any level of medical challenge, it's like you have like question, like believe yourself, and
yeah,
like don't give up until like you are presented with information that feels like in aligned with what is best for you, or in some instances your child, that
yeah,
maternal instinct around like no, this is what my nonverbal child needs. So yeah, it's like
yeah,
makes sense to me that you were like, oh yeah, no, I'm gonna, she's saying to do this, I'm gonna trust this doctor. And your partner's like, wait, no, 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 that is so extreme.
yeah,
There's got to be something else.
yeah. And I went
Mm-hmm.
into the specialist and I told him all of my symptoms. And he was like, if you were to read the symptoms of endometriosis out of a textbook, it would
Mm-hmm.
verbatim say what you just told me
Wow.
within 90 seconds.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It was wild. I just instantly was like, ah, like
Yes.
just being believed and being validated in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I didn't end up having endometriosis, to be able
Right.
to say like your symptoms are linked to something and they are not to be ignored
Mm-hmm.
was such a relief and so nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. And then 5 minutes later, ultrasounds, vaginal ultrasounds. He's like, so you see these lines? These are called Venetian blinds. This is endometriosis in your uterus. That he's showing
Wow.
me. I know how to read an ultrasound better than a radiologist and an OB-GYN now to be able to identify endometriosis.
Wow.
Yeah. And granted, this is normal where we should have endometriosis, endometrium lining in our uteruses. But to be able to like see the Venetian blinds, not everyone has them, is what I understood.
Okay.
But then as we're looking at my ovaries, we get to my left ovary where I have this pain.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh my God, do you see this cyst? This is endometrioma. This is a cyst that is specifically tied to endometriosis. And we can tell because of how it shows up on the ultrasound. It has these like gray lines on it. A normal cyst. So our ovaries, when we release an egg, create cysts that egg essentially comes out of. And
Mm.
those on the ultrasound show up black. And
Mm.
so having that shading on the endometrioma means that there's blood stuck in that cyst that
Oh.
can't come out. And so we go to my other ovary and I had some cysts there. And he was like, these are normal cysts that are tied to like egg release and your like normal cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the time, that cyst was an inch. Like that's really big. I don't know how
Yeah.
big ovaries are, but that's like the size of my ovary, I feel like.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, that's really big. Like, do you think that that's been there for a while? And he's like, it's hard to say, but you've been experiencing pain there. It's highly likely that that cyst has been there for some time.
Mm,
And um, yeah, fast forward to my surgery in October. So I was scheduled that same day. He was like, you absolutely need surgery to remove this cyst. And then we'll go in and clean out anything else. And before a couple weeks before my surgery, I went in again to like prepare and all the things and get another ultrasound. That cyst was 1.5 inches. So it grew 1/2 inch between July and October.
oh man.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Did you feel, was there any relief in diagnosis, having a plan of like, was there a little bit of pressure that was taken off for you, or how did that translate into the rest of your life?
Oh my gosh. So when I had that diagnosis, I I like things very quickly changed. So as I
Mm,
shared, like after COVID, I had a time where I stopped drinking alcohol and completely like reset
mm-hmm,
my relationship with alcohol. At that
mm-hmm,
point, I completely stopped drinking alcohol again. I cut out dairy and gluten from my diet. I went on an anti-inflammatory diet.
mm,
Um, and I like definitely like 180'd in terms of lifestyle and like went on like medical medium celery juice diet. He's like not very well liked in the science and he doesn't like running, doing research on what he preaches.
mm,
But there are a lot of people who swear by his diet. And I read his book
mm-hmm,
and a lot of it just like intuitively made sense to me. And so I went really hard on just like a lot of the protocols that he had and just like started to detoxify my body
mm-hmm.
in preparation for this surgery and trying to do what I could to like undo the damage that had been done. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did
I
that,
mean,
okay.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, from a work standpoint, like things, I think, you know, I already was kind of planning my exit and things at that point, they didn't impact me as much. Like, I was like, okay, like, I need to prioritize myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm still an executive in this business. And like shareholders and investors are expecting me to deliver and show up in a certain way. But at the same time, I was much more protective of like making sure I could make the food that I needed to make for myself in the morning and that I had the resources to support me throughout the day and protect my time more so that I could support my body as I was like processing. And it was challenging because like a lifestyle change in general, as you know, is really like emotionally like we turn to so many different things to cope and navigate with life. And when you start taking
Yeah.
those things out of life, you're like, okay, what's next? Like, how do I now like navigate and manage without these things?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a slow unraveling. The one thing I would not give up was coffee. Like I was adamant about that. I ultimately did. I'm so like that was a necessary thing for me to cut out.
Wow. Yeah.
But it took me like 6 months to do that.
Yeah. Oh man. Did you, um, as a part of your lifestyle change, and I guess I maybe speaking some asking from personal experience, speaking from personal experience, um, like did that change how you attune to your community and your support network? Thinking about like partying and going out and being a part of, and then okay, now I'm not drinking anymore. I know for a lot of people that like for me, I'll speak for myself. When I stopped drinking, I was like, I need to be retaught how to engage with community. I need to be retaught how to be social. Was that was that part of that season for you too? Where I imagine when I think about like medical necessity, we need people to like help us like take care of ourselves and get through recovering from a surgery. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I'm just curious about like how that impacted community and the support that you were um, receiving.
Yeah. At the time, I was still dating that person, and
Mm-hmm.
so he was a huge support system for me. We had an amazing community around us, and he had a very like healthy relationship with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could go into party environments together and not drink. And so
Mm,
that was incredibly supportive.
yeah.
Um, and also, he had three daughters. And so, like, for a big chunk of that time, um, like the diagnosis happened in July. His two of his girls live in France, and so they came over for the month of August, and we just had like a wholesome family experience for that month that
Oh, I
was,
love
yeah, it
that.
was so sweet. And unfortunately, after that, we started to unravel our relationship, which was really challenging
Mm.
leading up to the surgery, knowing that like my core support system was not going to be there. And he ultimately, came and supported me like the day of my surgery. My
Oh,
mom flew out for my surgery.
yeah.
Um, but I think that as we started to navigate our breakup,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I needed to. So there was like so much change happening in my life. Like
Yeah.
I was changing my lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I was breaking up with this partner, and I was leaving my job. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of this was happening at the same time. And my
Yeah.
therapist was like, we're going to make a plan for you to like really like revive a sense of community.
Mm.
And I started a sewing club with some girlfriends
Oh.
who like I had a bunch of girls in my throughout my network that were wanting to start sewing, and so we would just get together and sew together. Um, and that was really the beginning of Aurora House, and
Mm.
seeing like, as especially Austin is such a drinking centered city,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just yeah, I became like really unenamored by Austin when I stopped drinking back in 2021. And I was just like, this is so disgusting, and had a really negative attitude about it. And I would still go out. I did during that time, like train myself to go out and have like a sparkling water and
Yeah.
kind of pretend that it was a drink. And I felt good going into spaces that were more like ravey or like concert, to where people are not paying attention to you. They're not focused
Yeah.
on what you're doing, but they are going to dance with you and have fun. And so it's like having focus be centered on something else is so much easier to not drink around.
Yeah.
And I definitely was like California sober. So like it that time allowed me to then like through this time like really just kind of show up authentically
Yeah.
and like in the space and know how to navigate that um without having a drink. And I definitely still like had my moments where I would have some
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's great. I know I love that your mom was able to come out as a part of supporting you too when you get to actual surgery. And I'm glad that you're able to continue engaging with your community in a way that felt good and meaningful. And I also like how that shift started happening where you're like, I want to be with people and I want to create, I want to start the sewing club, and how that's like
Yeah.
a like the seed that would become Aurora House.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about your surgery, which is October 2023. I know in the
Mhm.
intro talked a little bit more about like some of the specifics. Would you mind just painting the picture of what was learned from the surgery and what your recovery was like?
Yeah. Whew, surgery was crazy.
Mm,
It was on Halloween, which was really sweet. And I remember coming out of surgery, and the post-op nurse had like cat ears and like painted little whiskers on her face. And she's probably like 70. She was so sweet. And as I woke up, I started crying because I saw
Hmm.
her in costume and I was like, thank you so much for dressing up. Like I love Halloween. As I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, I love costumes. And so
Yes.
to come out of surgery, to that was incredible. And then, I get into my room with my mom and Dr. Breen comes out and he's like, wow, no wonder you were in so much pain. And I'm actually like really surprised that you didn't rate your pain higher because this
Mm.
is like on a scale of 1 to 10, you were a 15. Like this was
Oh,
really, really extreme. And
wow.
so I had that 1.5 inch cyst in my left ovary
Hmm.
that had actually fused my ovary to my colon. And so you're talking earlier about organs being fused together. So all of
Yeah.
that pain that I was feeling anytime I had like a bowel movement or during sex, like that was such an area of pain for me because
Oh,
those
wow.
organs were fused together. We did have a GI on call in case I needed to have part of my colon removed. But they like didn't know if that would be the case until they got in there. Thankfully, that was not the case.
Hmm.
Um, but I had endometriosis all over my torso, all over my bladder, on the outside of my uterus, wrapped around my right fallopian tube. He said that if I had waited, I would have lost my right ovary and was at risk of losing my left ovary because of how quickly that left cyst was growing. And so
Mm.
that was a really crazy realization, that like I hadn't been listened to for, a year in the doctor when I finally started to kind of like go pursue this.
Yeah.
That if I had waited longer, like I could have lost both of my ovaries. Um,
Wow.
and then, yeah. And then on top of that, they found endometriosis on my diaphragm. And the diaphragm is not an organ that's talked about very often,
Hmm.
but it is the balloon that expands under our lungs that allows our lungs to actually like take in air. And
Hmm.
so our diaphragm is directly like it's all of this from our jaws all the way down through our pelvic floor are connected, and the diaphragm and the pelvic floor work together to pull the diaphragm down and then like allow it to release essentially.
Yeah.
And
Oh my
so they couldn't,
gosh.
yeah, and you can't, if you're not a specialist in diaphragmatic surgery, it's very dangerous to do surgery on the diaphragm because if you puncture it, your lungs can collapse and then you're like at risk of like
Yeah.
fatal risk essentially. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I still have endometriosis on my diaphragm. It was not significant enough to go like and do surgery again, but with
Hmm.
another specialist. But it definitely is a potential for my future, if I wasn't doing all the protocols that I do now. And so, yeah, just to have that shared back to me
Hmm.
after my OB-GYN was like, it's just fluid in your fallopian tube. And
Wow.
also, this woman who delivers babies thinking that she had the ability and the like experience to go in and do surgery on my fallopian tube and remove endometriosis. Like I just can't imagine like what would have happened with her doing that surgery on me and finding out how extreme it was. And I have had horror stories of people who, when they found out that I was getting surgery, were like, oh my gosh, like do research on your surgeon. Like, I have a friend who got endometriosis surgery and they like fucked up a nerve and she
Oh
like
my
can't
God.
feel anything in her left leg or something crazy. Like, really, really crazy experiences of doctors
Whoa.
who are not specialized in doing the surgery thinking that like they can.
God.
So I think that is like one thing I'd recommend if someone suspects they have endometriosis, finding a specialist in your city or a nearby city. And
Mm-hmm.
there is a group. I can't recall what the name of it. It's like Joanne's Community or something. It's a woman's name, and
Mm-hmm.
it has a list of like all of the best endometriosis specialists by city. And you can do
Okay.
your research there. I'll try to find it so that we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, that would be great if we could do that and make that resource available to our listeners. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you have the surgery in October 2023 and you leave the startup in January 2024, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk us about the end and how you once again arrive at a place where you're like, I'm just doing something for me now.
Yeah.
Or however you want to frame that. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but walk us
Yeah,
through
no.
that.
Yeah. It was an interesting end. I mean, our startup was pivoting and
Mm-hmm.
kind of redefining our product offering. It was really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I like was really passionate about the mission and our technology, and finally figuring out a path to like making it more adoptable. And so,
Yeah.
and I had invested so much time, and I had a lot of options. So like you at a startup, you don't get shares, but you have options that you can ultimately exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And like bonus on the table and all these things that were like, I was questioning like, what do I leave on the table?
Mm-hmm.
And in 2023, I got to take 2 vacations, and Thanksgiving was one of them. And I went to London and Copenhagen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like 4 weeks out of my surgery, and I get to Copenhagen, and I went to the design museum, and the first exhibit was this like fashion designer that it was just incredible, like the visual art that this person created representing all of the different counties of Denmark, and like created a costume or like a uniform for them based on like the cultural, like what was going on in modern culture at that time in that county. It was so cool.
Love. Oh
Um,
my God, that sounds so cool.
yeah. And then so Denmark has a really strong culture of passing down clothing. It's a very sustainable culture. And um, they're also like mending is really like core to their clothing and fashion experience. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a whole exhibit on the history of mending clothing in Denmark. And I got to this section and just like immediately broke down in tears. And I had to
Mm-hmm.
like go into like, it was super busy and it was raining outside that day. So like
Mm-hmm.
everyone's inside. I had to like go into a corner and like cry in a corner because I was like, this is so
Mm-hmm.
weird. Like, I would understand if it's like, you're standing in front of like a Rembrandt that's like really moving, but like we're looking at a sewing, like a loom here. um,
They're mending their clothes through generations of Danes. I
exactly.
love those moments when we're like, really, brain? Like this is the thing? This is the thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I just knew in that moment I needed to pursue like a creative act, a creative
Yeah.
expression. I needed
Mm-hmm.
to, I've always been really interested in clothing, and
Mm-hmm.
I became really good friends with a woman in Austin who sells vintage clothing, Sonic Wave Vintage. She has an amazing Instagram. She has the best vintage clothing. Um, and like, yeah. So during COVID, like before COVID, I would have little like private like buying parties at her house, and I'd bring like my friends from different parts of my community together, and she would measure everyone, and we would do like a vintage jeans party. And then during COVID,
Fun.
she would do these hauls, and for my birthday, my boyfriend at the time bought me a gift certificate with her, and she came over with a bunch of stuff, and we were in my garage, and I was just like trying on all these clothes, and it was so sweet. And so anyway, I am really passionate about vintage clothes. And so I just had this calling of like, I need to pursue this more. And so that
Mhm.
kind of created this shimmer of like, okay, my soul is like, I've always been connected to this, and my soul is like calling me into this. And also, I'll say, like, while I was navigating all of the emotional stuff
Mhm.
uh, in my role as a 30 something non technical leader of an AI engineering team, I there were so many different dynamics and triggers that would come up with my colleagues, with me. And the
Mhm.
only way that I could process it was by doing watercolor. And I'm not a linear thinker. There was also just too much to write. And so being able to express myself through like watercolor journaling, um, which I found on, ironically, on a business trip. I was just on an airplane and had 30 minutes to kill, and American had like Skillshare videos, and I just watched this woman Skillshare, and it was so amazing. It changed my life. It literally was like the
I
also another
love
like
that.
birth of Aurora House. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so these like little, that was really a ritual that I would use to
Mm.
process like what's all the shit happening up here that's like all the external factors triggering then like these narratives that I already hold about myself. So it's commonly
Yeah.
doing these like kind of landscape type images, helping to see like what's out there and what's underneath. And then I
Mm.
would do this kind of opposite effect from like dialectic behavioral therapy. Like, how do I look at this and convince myself of the opposite? And I would do the
Mm.
opposite. So if I did like a, a a nighttime landscape and like a graveyard, then on the flip side, I would do like the sun rising with like a flower or like a garden instead of a
Mm.
grave. Um,
Yeah.
and really finding the like positive outcome of like all the negative shit that I was experiencing. And so
Mhm.
this this moment in Copenhagen really solidified to me that like I needed to take this like creative spirit more seriously.
Mhm.
And yeah, as the company continued to like go in a certain direction, I had really like my whole role was like protecting the team from like all of the like shiny object syndrome or like just as an executive and a strategic
Mhm.
executive and a visionary, like we need to dream and we need to like come up with ideas, but not everyone in the company can hold those ideas. They really need to have like
Mhm.
very clear, like here are the directives, here are the goals, and they can't hear all of that because it's going to confuse like how is what I'm doing now supportive of that vision that actually is going to change in 5 minutes. And
Right.
so when it came to executing, I was really pushing back on like how we were going to execute on this new vision. And it just became
Mhm.
clear that like there was not space for my pushback. And I
Mm.
like very like I was just like, we need to talk about my exit and made a plan. And we had a month. And so yeah, I left on January 15th. And I was like, okay, I have three options. I have like I'm gonna go. I was wanting to freeze my eggs, and that was a big reason for like ending things with my partner. And like I thought I maybe wanted kids,
Mhm.
and um, so I'm gonna maybe go mail it in at like a Google or a Microsoft, and just like be a cog in a wheel for a little while,
Mhm.
um, or I will do this creative thing, and I don't know what that looks like, but it's like a space, and it's decentering alcohol, and it's for women, and we can come together and like explore skills and like craft together and all these things. Or I'm going to start a tech company that's going to be like female led, and like minority is a majority essentially.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I do have some ideas on what that looks like, but they're just it needs much more capital
Mhm.
than what I wanted to go after. And
Yeah.
yeah, I went to Asia for 2 months, and I mailed it in on the beach instead. And I was like resetting my nervous system. And on my departure, I realized it took me a month. So like February, I left on February 15th for Asia. So I had a month and I was like, I'm going to get my house ready. I'm going to do all these things. I had some friends coming to live at my house to be with my animals. And I literally took the month to like lay in bed and I was just
Yeah.
like destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I went to Asia, I went to the Philippines and went scuba diving like 20 times on this trip. And then I went to Indonesia and I did a Bali like spiritual experience. And that is where like all of this was like unraveling this like masculine shell that I had built up. And I feel like the endometriosis is kind of like a representation of this like toxicity that was like
Mm-hmm.
honestly like if you think about our wombs and what they are like they we have them to create life,
Mm-hmm.
and anything that comes into your body, all of our blood goes through our womb, through our uterus. And I felt like that endometriosis was moving toxins out of my womb so that could stay like sacred, kind of like creative center that was not
Mm-hmm.
being threatened by the toxins going into my body. But then the endometriosis didn't really have anywhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just like goes into the body. And yeah, so I was like on this trip dismantling all of these like masculine beliefs and trying to like reconnect with my feminine essence and really just like allow softness and allow
Mm-hmm.
like I can lay it down. And I was going to these yoga classes that were for like feminine energy, or like yoga classes for like female hormones. And this one class was more of a like experiencing class with a little bit of yoga in it.
Mm-hmm.
And somatic experiencing is very much like dropping into your body, getting out of the
Mm-hmm.
head, and like paying attention to what's going on physically. But there were probably, for anyone who's listening, like this was at the yoga barn. I did like my own DIY spiritual journey, and I loved. Some people hate on the yoga barn. I loved it. Um, it's just like it's very touristy, but it
Okay.
is really an oasis. And
Mm.
so there were probably like 40 women in this class, and the teacher at the beginning is like, um, we like everyone walk around and like welcome each other with your eyes. And
Mm.
you I would like I loved this. It reminded me of like sorority rush and like how
Yeah.
Jackie would like wink at you like at
Yeah.
rush, like that, like
Yeah.
yeah.
So like knowing I see
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I'm thriving in this environment. Like all of these women are like looking down. They will like not make eye contact. And
Oh.
then yeah, and you could just feel the wounding and the
Mm.
like that's like the sisterhood wounds, this like distrust of other women. And
Mm-hmm.
um we do like all this like, movements and stuff, and at the end we circle up and the instructor encouraged us to like go around and share 3 words about your experience. And like 65% of the women said something like it's positive, inspired, whatever. But the other 35% were used negative terms like devastated,
Oh,
frustrated, angry.
yeah.
And we did a little share afterwards. And those women spoke up and shared that they didn't know still like what feminine energy was, how to tap into that, angry that they can't connect with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this like opening up, this like cracking open of this group that like couldn't look each other in the eyes, now are like being super vulnerable in this like really
Mm-hmm.
loving container after this creative practice of like do these dances and take up space and be in
Mm-hmm.
community together. And I was like, wow, like I needed to be reminded, women everywhere need to be reminded that like feminine energy and masculine energy, even though those terms sound very binary, they are not binary.
Mm-hmm.
And feminine energy, I use femininity and feminine energy synonymously.
Yeah.
Femininity is very like society has a lot of like labels for that. So people in the spiritual community don't necessarily like to use that language.
Mm.
I am me, so I use that language.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, I became so passionate about like, we as women experience femininity and feminine energy by being creative in community together. And
Yes.
it's not what society tells us is
Mm-hmm.
good girl, quiet girl, pretty girl, all that bullshit. It's
Mm-hmm.
whatever the fuck we want it to be
Yes.
that is like, if I were to describe like masculine and feminine, like masculine is structured and it's like the riverbank that allows for feminine energy to flow through it.
Mm.
And the more structure you have, the less water is flowing. And to most people, that would mean that there is a resource deficit. But if
Mm-hmm.
there's no structure, there's flooding
Flooding.
and
Yeah.
it's really difficult to navigate. You're probably drowning. And so there has to be a healthy balance. But what's beautiful about feminine energy is that, like, if you have a good balance and that there's enough structure there, whatever happens in that flow is feminine energy. And so you
Mm-hmm.
don't need this like binary, like, this is femininity, this is how you get in touch with it. Just like give yourself enough
Yeah.
structure to like be chaotic and to flow and to like where like flow where energy goes kind of thing, and like embody
Mm-hmm.
this like watery, I'm a fire sign, so I'm like very fiery, and I also think there's a lot of feminine energy in that too. It
Yeah.
just like flows where energy goes kind of thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
um that really was the birth of Aurora House. And that was like a major download for me of like, no, you're not going to go mail it in at Google. No, you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to go start a tech company. You are going to do the creative space. You're going to bring women together and you're going to heal together.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this was kicked off by the endometriosis
Mm-hmm.
taking over my body and being like, whoa,
Yeah.
bitch,
Yeah.
slow down.
Yeah. In our pre-show call, you mentioned a bus ride where you drove past what inspired the name Aurora House. Do you mind just telling us that story?
Yeah. Yeah. So I will say, I was talking to ChatGPT about names and I was like, give me goddesses, give me really feminine, like deities and like
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted all the ideas. And
Yeah.
Aurora really stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And Aurora, I mentioned earlier, is the goddess of dawn. She represents the new opportunity that comes with each day. For me, as I was thinking about this space, it's really like the new opportunity to create the life that you desire with each day. That means
Mm-hmm.
living in your authentic truth and your authentic expression. And yeah, I was in the middle of nowhere on a 2-hour bus ride in the island Lombok in Indonesia. And we drive by all of these housing foundations. And I was
Mm-hmm.
listening to the audiobook literally on this bus ride, The
Mm.
Universe Has Your Back by Gabby Bernstein.
Oh yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
behind me here somewhere. Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah, I love
So
her.
a lot of it, yeah, a lot of it is
Mm-hmm.
about signs, the signs that the universe
Mm-hmm.
gives you that you're on the right path. And ooh, I'm getting chills talking about it. So the housing
Mm.
foundations, we get to this moment, or the like entrance to it, and this
Mm-hmm.
massive gate, like massive, and it's made out of metal, and it says Aurora Graha.
Mm.
And my jaw was on the floor. I was like, Aurora, like, how on earth is this word in the middle of Indonesia
Mm-hmm.
just there? And so I immediately am like, I gotta look up what Graha means in Indonesian.
Yeah.
And it means house, building, or office.
Mm.
And so it literally said Aurora House. And I was at the time, I was like, Aurora House, Aurora Collective. Like I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out like what the second word was going to be. And in that moment, I was like, it's Aurora House.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I actually just like I think one of the other synchronicities that really made sure that this thing was birthed really was I came back to the States on April 8th, or no, well, for the April 8th eclipse. So I came back on like the 6th or
Mm-hmm.
the 7th. And because Austin was like right in the line of the eclipse.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I came back and got a tarot reading with a girlfriend that day. And her reading was that she would be given an opportunity that she knows she couldn't take, but it was given to her to give to someone else. And
Mm.
she's the only person in Austin that I know who has a brick and mortar. And so I was like waiting to tell her about this. I did not tell her while I was on my trip. I definitely like told
Yeah.
some people and was like ideating and figuring out how I'm gonna like make it happen when I come back. But you know, when you're on vacation, especially a long one, and you're like, I have this amazing idea, and then you come back, you're like, I'm not
Yeah.
fucking doing that.
Yeah. That's for
Like,
vacation thoughts. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So I sit down with my friend Ashley and I'm like, okay, well, I have something to tell you. And I tell her the idea, and she's like, oh my God, the thing that I was given that I can't take is a space, and it's turnkey. And it's my friends. They have an antique store there and they're looking to sublet it. They literally texted me today. And if I could take it, I would, but I have my lease. I can't break my lease to like go take the space. And I was like, whoa, bitch, like this is way too fast. Like I have not even been in the country for like 48 hours. And
Right.
she's
Oh
like, you
my God.
have to go see it. You have to. I'm texting her right now. You're going tomorrow. And like, this is just one of those friends. I actually met this girl on an airplane and I was stalking a chair that she had at her vintage shop. And we sat next to each other on the airplane. And she told me, like, where, like, she was like, oh, I have a vintage shop. I was like, where? And she was like, on this address. And I was like, did you have the avocado chair? And yeah, so we like became fast friends. And so ever since that airplane ride, she's always been like really, because that was December,
Mm-hmm.
15 days before I quit my job. So fast forward to April, I'm with her, and yeah, she scheduled a time for me to come see the space that I'm sitting in right now. And I was there at 9 a.m. And then I remembered Graha. And
Mm.
in my head, of course, like I wanted to be in a house. And there are these
Mm-hmm.
really great like houses in Austin that are commercially
Yeah.
zoned, and but they're very expensive. And I walked in and the walls were this like beautiful like sage lime wash, and I just immediately was like, Graha, building or office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I need to like kind of start visualizing this differently. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I signed my lease 3 weeks later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool. I love those people that come into our lives where they're like that push that like this is happening. Like you like
Yeah.
don't drag your feet, like you're going that direction. So I love
Yeah.
that that person just popped up into your life with such amazing timing. You're in Aurora House
Me too.
now.
I
What is
am.
the official established date? When did you open your doors and start welcoming women and non-binary folks into the space?
Yeah, we opened June 30th. So I moved in Memorial Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really beautiful about this entire experience, and like when you asked at the beginning, why am I uniquely qualified?
Mm-hmm.
When we heed a call that's placed on our hearts, everything falls into place. And I do feel like I recognize my privilege and all of the resources that I had access to previously to help me build this space. But I didn't have access to people. And in terms of like, I didn't have a business partner. I
Yeah.
really was just like, I'm gonna follow this calling, and I am blind faith trusting that what I need personally is needed by others.
Mm-hmm.
And once I started to take that action, obviously I found the space. When I was talking to people about finding space, they're like, oh my God, it took me a year and a half. And
Mm.
so that was a big reason for like moving forward with this, was like everyone I talked to was like, it's so hard to
Yeah.
find this. And so
Mm-hmm.
I moved in Memorial Day weekend, And I had two women that I had no, like, it did not know before this, but we just were like introduced, who happened to be available during the month of June, who showed up every single day to help me build stuff, to help me design the space, to help me like everything in here. The tables, like, we bought from a craft studio that was closing, and but we had to like take them apart, put them back together. We have a little section called the Pillow Palace, and I needed more storage. And so we built these risers that allowed me for like 18 inches of storage underneath. And then on top is this like Moroccan Pillow Palace vibe. Um,
Mm,
yeah, it's so juicy.
love.
Yes. And so the universe sent me people to
Mm,
support me in this
mm-hmm.
endeavor. I was able to have my soft opening on June 15th and my grand opening on June 30th. And literally, like, one of the neighbors walked in and she was like, I've been looking for community like this in Austin for like years, signed
Yeah,
up for a 12-month membership that day. Um, yeah, she's become one of my closest friends. And
love.
so, um, yeah, it's now 7 months old, and it's interesting because I exchanged one stressful job for another.
Mm-hmm.
I work 6 days a week, often like 12, 14-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
But during those hours, I also have the deepest connections with people that are so fulfilling, and
Yeah.
I get to creatively express myself. I have this like beautiful, like, I get to do my structure, but I also like get to have chaos within it. And I get to like figure out every single day, like, who am I today? How can I
Yeah.
more authentically show up than I did yesterday? And I like this podcast today, like, really inspired me to like shed as much as possible and just like show up.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's been, every single day is a journey, and like allowing your true essence to like bubble up. I liken true essence
Mm-hmm.
to being the like the bubbles in a glass of champagne or
Mm-hmm.
a sparkling water, and like, just by like expressing a creative act, you're thinning the veil to like allow those bubbles to come up. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes those bubbles are like not as dense as other times, and it really takes effort to like seek that out. And so yeah, I'm definitely like, I try to embody what I preach as much as possible, but I'm also not perfect at it. And I'm so grateful
Mm-hmm.
for having a space where I can continue to like get the value that I'm wanting other people to get out of it. I also get out of it. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we have an amazing community of both like subscription members who literally are coming like 20 times a month, some of them. Like, I see them almost every day.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, it's so incredible. And it really, I don't, I get really like, I question when the term sisterhood is used about
Mm.
businesses, because I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't have sisters. And so to have the word sisterhood used like flippantly in like marketing language and stuff, like,
Mm.
it makes me question. And through this and through what the community has brought into this space, I'm like, oh, this is sisterhood. Like, this is
Mm.
truly amplifying each other. There is no meanness, no, like, yeah, removing the male gaze,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, out of a space completely changes the dynamic of how people show up. And
Yeah.
yeah, the connections are just like so much more intimate and fulfilling than I ever even expected.
Um, I just love that so much. I love that you're creating and enabling this kind of space and safety for people. What was coming to mind for me as you were just sharing that last little bit there, I just close friends of mine will be like, okay, you always have to bring this up, Liz, but we as women, we used to ovulate together, menstruate together, birth children together, breastfeed each other's babies. Depending on what culture you were in, like during menstruation, we would go to our hut, or we'd have our rituals or bathing rituals together. And I feel like our society, driven by business, driven by success and all these things, it's taken us away from that. And what I love about what you're creating and enabling at Aurora House is like that coming home to ourselves, to one another, embracing creativity and expression in that like doing life side by side type thing that I really think is inherent to who we are, and that we all understand on some cellular level because that's where we come from. But we've just been
Totally.
generations removed with having that in practice, or having the space for it, or having it labeled as practicing witchcraft and you're going to be punished for it. So
Yeah.
I love that you're creating that in Austin. That makes me so happy.
Thank you. It's
Oh,
been so fun. And I'm glad that you brought up the witchcraft element, because it is like, there are um natural cultural uh evolution that's happened where
mm-hmm.
like family units have become more reliant on themselves and less
Right.
reliant on like the extended family.
Yeah.
But also women have been systematically disenfranchised over generations.
Yep.
Wise women used to be revered, and they were the keepers of stories, and they were the doulas and the
Mm-hmm.
healers that then were labeled witch because they had the wisdom. And also, when you go through menopause, you lose your like give a fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was much like the outspoken wise leaders became a threat to the patriarchal system that
Mm-hmm.
happened when we started to pass land down through like male heirs and things like that, and taking like stripping power away from women, because I would imagine that women, especially if like her husband had all this land and he died or something, and then she had to like secede that to his brother or whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
women probably pushed back, and there was like, oh wow, this power dynamic, like we're going to take this. And so
Mm-hmm.
women have been systematically isolated through our
Mm-hmm.
lives to in an effort to control and
Mm-hmm.
like maintain power. And it's so subtle that that type of language is labeled as feminist, and it's labeled as
Right.
like, oh my
Right.
god, this again. But like, yeah, it's that again, because
Mm-hmm.
no one wants to talk about it, because it is actually, it exists. Like it's
Yeah.
just part of our narrative, that
Mm-hmm.
it's, to say it so explicitly is like, surely it's not that extreme,
Right.
but it is. And so
It
bringing
is.
women together is reclaiming power
Yes, it
and
is.
not allowing each other to feel isolated and to feel like we have to do things alone. And why are single women with cats being
Mm-hmm.
like demonized and called out? Well, because we are the happiest citizens, like statistically.
Yeah.
And so to have a space where, yeah, everyone can just show up as they are, single, not single, like, but all of our voices are heard. We are all witnessed. Our stories are witnessed. We do full moon circles every month together.
Mm.
Um, and so many other rituals that allow us to come back together in community. And literally, like, all of my members at some point have told me this has changed their lives,
Yeah.
and in a like very deep way that is
Mm.
touching that inner knowing that you mentioned, that like we
Mm-hmm.
all know on some cellular level that
Mm-hmm.
how life is not how we're meant to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, when and I'm going to do a little political thing here, but like
Mm-hmm.
when Trump was elected, there was honestly for me a sense of relief,
Mm.
because I was like, change doesn't happen when status quo exists.
That's true.
And there is going to be horrible fallout. There's already is horrible fallout
Yeah.
from his presidency. But what I have seen is this unification of people, me included, that were apolitical, that
Mm-hmm.
now I am figuring out like what does collective action look like and how does
Mm-hmm.
Aurora House become a hub for people that if they want to be political and maybe they don't have the energy to do a protest, like activism looks very different today than it did in the civil rights era or
Yeah.
even back in 2020. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, bringing leaders together and understanding like what does modern day activism look like, and
Mm-hmm.
as especially a lot, Austin is very white, and
Mm-hmm.
women who are coming together who have the hearts like we have, the privilege like we have, how do we affect change and use our power and influence to like really create the world that we want to see?
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, there's such a weird silver lining there of the time that we're in. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that like things are absolutely going to get worse before they get better.
Right.
But as long as we are together behind the scenes, figuring out like what does better look like? What do we want better to
Mm-hmm.
look like? Like the
Mm-hmm.
stories that are happening out in the world aren't, that is a narrative, but it doesn't have to be our narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we claiming as our narrative? And how do we band
Mm-hmm.
together to make that a reality?
Mm. Yes. Yes. I I love all of that. I appreciate it. I feel like when I hear you talking about the relief and like the hope for outcomes, I was thinking just about the cycles of nature and something that I've been reminding myself of, just like existing in our current socio-political environment, being experiencing unexpected and unwanted long-term unemployment. There's cycles of nature where you don't get spring and you don't get summer without the destruction of fall and winter. There has
Yes.
to be something where there is health and safety to take root. And I think that when I think about all this falling apart and just seeing what is happening around us, it's really scary and it's painful. And I don't want to diminish how terrible it is and how scary it is. But you can't have spring without winter. And
Yeah.
so that is where I'm hopeful that like the mobilization, the people realizing, oh, I'm not alone, or like, oh, what I thought to be true actually isn't true. Like what you were saying very at the very beginning about the values of the organization that you were working for and leading, where you're like, I was adopting other values. They weren't my values. I feel like this is an opportunity for a lot of people to be like, wait, I thought those were my values, but how they're getting espoused right now, that's not what that means for me. That looks different. How do
Yeah.
I bring that to life in my life and in my community? And I just love that you're facilitating that and changing people's lives at Aurora House.
Yeah. Oh, and I have chills right now listening to you say that, because no one knows the life cycle,
Right.
which is what I
Yeah.
call what you just described.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
that always, it like the it's not the life death cycle, it's the life death life.
Life, death,
And
life. Yeah.
no one knows that better than women, because we
That's
go
right.
through that every
Every month.
single month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Spot on. I love, I just also want to touch on the menopause mention that you brought up in terms of the history of how we've gotten here as women. Um, you know, humans are one of a handful of species that actually go through menopause. And the theory is that that is because we have knowledge and wisdom to pass on. And I think it's like whales and dolphins, and there are a couple other animals that do this too. But it's literally, we are not like the narrative of women are here to procreate and create babies. Like no, we're here to live and to help future generations. We are supposed to pass on what we have learned. And I just wanted to mention that because I also feel like menopause is something
Yes.
that we also don't talk about.
Mhm.
And I hope we can start talking about it more. But again, that's what you're creating space for that in Austin, where people can have multi-generational conversations and learn from one another, peer to peer, age difference, whatever. And it's welcomed. And it's, again, it's like a return home to how we're meant to be and how we're meant to relate to one another. So just can't give you enough
Yeah.
credit. So do.
Thank you. Thank you. So beautiful. I love that. I need to go, I'm gonna go like look into that more because oh my gosh, whales are so amazing.
They are, oh my gosh. And it's like these animals that have these incredibly complex, beautiful brains that are like, oh wait,
Yeah.
a whale's wisdom. I don't think that my little human brain can comprehend what that's like.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you can share with us about the kind of programming you do at Aurora House or things that people can look forward to in the coming
Mm.
months, from a programming perspective, or if people want to stop by and check you out?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, stopping by and checking us out is really easy. I mean, we have our calendar live on our Instagram. This month is Women's History Month and also the spring equinox. So,
Yes.
and also South by Southwest. So, yeah, what are some things that we have going on? We do have an artist who, speaking of like intergenerational conversations, who she went to art school in New York City in the 1960s.
Mm.
I just can't imagine. So like fabulous, but also she said that out of her entire 4 years, she only had one woman teacher. And like all the men would go to this like all men's bar, and it would be like all the male students and the male teachers. And so then they get buddy buddy, and then they get all the like good insight and all that. Like just hearing that, I was like,
Hmm.
classic. That's so wow. Okay. But anyway,
Typical.
so
Yeah.
yeah. So she's going to be doing she's going to have her art hung here, and she is on the 9th doing a free like oil painting demo.
Mm.
On the 8th, we will be doing a just some like really funsy International Women's Day. We have an acrylic painting class painting faces, and you'll make a little mini poster of a historic woman of your choice
Yeah.
and someone who's particularly inspiring to you. And then after that, we'll do an art history lesson on female artists, and you'll pick the style that you gravitate towards, and you'll actually make a self-portrait collage based on that artist's style.
Hmm.
um, we have very juicy sound baths, like a sound bath and chanting experience, our full moon women's circle on the 14th. So yeah, basically like we've got art, mindfulness, movement, and lots of different opportunities to connect.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And can you please share with us the Instagram handle and if there's a website that people can pop in to check you out?
Yes, it is. The Instagram is Aurora House underscore ATX, and the
Okay.
website is aurorahouseatx.com. And right now, our Instagram is a lot of like event oriented promotion because I've been running it all myself. But I
Yeah.
do have an amazing social media girly who is just really like an amazing marketing like executive,
Yes.
um, who also has endometriosis and is so excited that I'm doing this podcast because she had surgery as well. We have a lot in common.
Wow.
Scoliosis is also common in my family. She has
Oh,
scoliosis. There's a lot of like overlap. And so she's redoing the website right now, and we're about to start pushing out like content for people that are all over. You don't necessarily have to be in Austin, and you can still get value out of following us because I'll be talking a lot about our philosophy and why creativity is so critical, how to community
mm-hmm.
build in your community, um, all the things. So trying to,
Amazing.
get branch out of just promoting our events constantly.
Oh, I love that. And I love the nod to International Women's Day, Women's History Month. It's also, I can't believe I didn't mention this already, March is Endometriosis Awareness Month as well. And
Yeah.
so we'll have that. And also for what it's worth, Sarah and friend, we are having a scoliosis episode in a couple weeks. So
Oh,
please tune into
nice.
that. Also another
Yes.
Chapman sorority sister.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So all kinds of good stuff.
Yes,
Um,
I will tune into that.
yeah, I'm this has just been so great, Sarah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add before I ask you the final show questions that I ask all of our guests?
I don't think so.
Okay. I've just appreciated this conversation so much and appreciate you. Such
Thank you.
admiration for all the amazing work you're doing.
Thank you. This has been so, so much fun. I love you so much.
Oh, I love you too. All right, Sarah. If you could go back to right before you received your endometriosis diagnosis, what would you say to that younger version of yourself?
I think, I mean, you touched on this a little earlier, but like, I really would say believe yourself
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
don't take binary answers from doctors.
Yeah.
Like, don't accept that.
Right.
And there is always gray area, and there are always ways to like come to a solution. It just is a
Hmm.
matter of self advocacy.
Hmm.
And that's really difficult to know, like when you should, but like when all of your symptoms really are leading you to like, like if I were to read this about a friend on paper and it wasn't about me,
Hmm.
and I like what I say to that friend's like, this sounds very bad.
Hmm.
Take that
Yeah.
advice from yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk, yeah. So believe yourself.
Yeah. Believe yourself.
Yeah,
That is, I think, one of the best things we can offer to ourselves. I love that.
yeah.
Second question, what tool or resource has been most helpful in navigating your journey?
Hmm. For my endometriosis journey, and getting diagnosed and navigating my diagnosis, and also what to do after,
Hmm.
um, my friends who
Yeah.
also had surgery had endometriosis, and even afterwards, I have become that resource for people. And
Hmm.
so yeah, really really leaning into the people who have experienced it,
Hmm.
so that there's more, again, power. Oh, my AirPods are dying here. um I think it's okay.
Yeah, you're sounding good.
There's more power in like hearing each other's stories and amplifying our voices. Again, like I think
Yeah.
that's call that out as like that's an example of how power can impact you.
Yeah.
Like if you don't talk about things and you just take a doctor's word for it, you're powerless.
Hmm.
Coming
Hmm.
together and talking about what was your experience, and being able to see parts of yourself in people's stories, and then
Yeah.
being able to intuitively say like, okay, like all of these things or these people were true for me.
Hmm.
Maybe not that part of that story, but like then you can create your own plan based on what was resonant.
Yes. I appreciate that a lot. I'm gonna highlight a couple of things there. I think that in healing, something that is so overlooked is this idea of a hand ahead and a hand behind, where somebody else is like, I have lived through this too. Let me offer you my hand. And then when you have, another phrase is take what you want and leave the rest. So with information from other people's stories, being like, this is what we have in common. This resonates with me. Other stuff that that's great for you, but it doesn't work. But then having a hand behind as well. It's like new person with an endometriosis diagnosis or whatever it might be. I let me share my experience with you in a way that I hope is helpful, and I hope you also take what you want and leave the rest. And I so appreciate you saying that because our communities are so critical to our healing.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. I love
Hmm.
that saying.
Hmm.
And I will say
Hmm.
too, tools. acupuncture with an
Mm,
acupuncturist that specializes in women's reproductive health, and pelvic floor therapy uh,
mm,
were two spaces of self-care.
yeah,
And that was also my time as an executive, to where I could say, like, my doctor ordered this to go, and like
yeah,
acupuncture, you sit on that table for 45 minutes and sleep. Like, that was my nap time and my time
yeah.
to zen out in a really like
Hmm.
stressful time period. So yeah, just, and like pelvic floor therapy is often massage. And so like if you have access to those things, go get it, just like for mental health. And as
Hmm.
mentioned earlier, like the impact of chronic pain on mental health is significant. And so to have
Yes.
something that's supportive of the chronic pain, and also more so, honestly, for me, mental health, that was such a godsend. Uh,
Hmm.
and then I will say, on my journey from like something that helped me bridge from old life to new life. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, she is an author, Jungian analyst, and every single one of her books is so juicy. She writes a lot about the female archetypes within Jungian psychology, and
Hmm.
uses a lot of myth and storytelling to unpack those archetypes. And so it's very healing for those of
Hmm.
us who grew up as Disney girlies because of the Disney princess programming.
Uh-huh.
And she
Yep.
goes back to, where she doesn't ever talk about Disney at all, but
Hmm.
she will mention Brothers Grimm sometimes, but she goes back even further to like the origin stories of where those came from culturally,
Yeah.
and how different they are. And it just is
Hmm.
like it's very healing, but also very illuminating to the landscape of the feminine that
Hmm.
we have in our bodies. And
Hmm.
if you feel a calling from your lineage, your ancestors, any calling to explore your womanhood in a more like inclusive and destigmatizing way, her books are incredible. Women Who Run with Wolves is like
Oh,
where to start.
yes. Also potentially on the shelf behind me.
Yes.
Love that recommendation. That's so great. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
And then our very last question for you, which I feel like we've touched on a little bit, but if anyone is relating to your story, what would you say to them?
Yeah. Yeah. I see you, sister.
Mm,
It makes me instantly emotional because
yeah.
I think I can talk more being on the other side. I have so much perspective,
Hmm.
but being in the thick of it is very debilitating. And don't yeah, have grace with yourself, and hold boundaries, and seek out the things that are going to be supportive to you, whether that is pelvic floor therapy or that is taking the day off.
Hmm.
I also like really looking at nutrition and how to balance our hormones. Like there's so much science that I know we talked about pre-show that we didn't really touch on here,
Yeah.
but yeah, nervous system regulation and starting to like rewire our bodies is so important. And just understanding the science behind our
Hmm.
nervous systems, how our hormones, like essentially endometriosis is an overproduction of estrogen plus poor detoxification of estrogen in the body. So there's 3 different ways to detoxify estrogen, and 2 of those ways are like bad detoxification. I'm giving quotes around bad, where one is like a healthy way of detoxifying estrogen, and that causes inflammation and the things get stuck in the body and all this stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of information out there, and just like having grace with yourself of where you are in your journey, and you don't have to know all of the information to know what your body is telling you is right for you.
Yeah.
And one of our core beliefs at Aurora House and in my life is that every woman has all of the wisdom within our bodies to navigate any problem. Hearing those stories and having community helps us look in different angles of a mirror, but we have all of that inside of us. And so it's just a matter of seeking out the mirror so that we can draw out those intuitive hits.
I love that. And you create the space for people to be mirrors for one another. I love that. Oh, Sarah King, I love you so much. Thank you
I
for
love
coming
you
on and
too.
sharing your story.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for your curiosity and your love, and yeah, your support and how much you care about the women that you're interviewing, and also the listeners, and how these stories can help people navigate. I mean, we just unpacked so much. So
Yeah, thank
yeah,
you.
yeah,
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
yeah.
And listeners, thank you as well for tuning in and being a participant in Sarah and my conversation today. If you haven't already, please follow us on Spotify. We are Uniquely Qualified. We're also on Instagram, where we are Uniquely Qualified Pod. If you know somebody who is an endo warrior like Sarah, please share this episode with them. It might help them. And if you've overcome a challenge that you'd like to share with listeners, please direct message me on Instagram or email me at uniquelyqualifiedpod@gmail.com. And no matter what you do today, please just remember, we are all uniquely qualified.